Welcome to the Inside Track on Real Estate with the Decker team. And today I've got a really special guest, Matt Mayo. And Matt Mayo is a lawyer, specializing in real estate.
Real estate specifically.
Yeah, which is really cool. Because most of the time I was just saying to Matt, when you have to call a lawyer, it's because life sucks. Because, somebody's suing you or someone's wronged you or... sometimes it's for good things. You need a will because, you had a baby or you got married or that kind of thing. And the other time that's really exciting is when you're buying a piece of property.
Yeah.
Because that's a good time to go see a lawyer.
And not to jump in on the questions too much, but that's actually the reason I enjoy real estate for the most part, because you get to see people when they're happy. You get to see people when they're happy.
So you're not dealing with the people that have committed a crime or not committed a crime, charged with committing a crime. Let me rephrase that.
But I mean, you hit it right on the head that pretty much any time that you're talking to a lawyer, it's because something's gone off the rails. Either you're suing somebody or somebody sued you. You've been charged with a crime. All this stuff that no matter what happens, even the ideal outcome is unpleasant.
Well, you go through all that stress and pain and costs.
Just to get back to where it should have been in the first place.
Right.
And so it's a really nice contrast to be able to deal with real estate, because you're getting ordinary people dealing with the most expensive thing that they'll ever buy, probably. Single investment for sure. And they just want to know what's going on, and they want to get through the process, and they're usually very happy at the end of it. So,
okay,
it's nice.
Yeah, so that's a good thing. You like happy clients.
yeah, happy clients. Every client has the potential to walk out of the office at the end of the process with a smile on their face.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, yeah, that's really great.
So, speaking of not so smiley, what kind of difficult circumstances are there to selling a home? And how do you help them with some of those issues that may pop up?
Yeah, I mean, being a realtor for all those years, you've seen that 1,000 times, I'm sure, due to deaths in the family, and the remaining spouse is old and can't take care of the property anymore, or is finally moving into a home, or there's a divorce, or a loss of a job means they can't afford the property anymore, and that's really, really tough. And I have to give you guys all the credit for dealing with the vast bulk of the issues that come around with that, because usually by the time they're talking to me, the process is right nearing the end, and so instead of that, all the harsh or sadness and anger and disappointment and all that seems to have mostly burnt out by that point. So even when they're selling for difficult reasons, by the time they're talking to me, relief is a very common thing to come for them to come in with. And so and then of course I get to see the actual day of completion, and usually the reaction at that point is thanks for helping us deal with this.
Yeah, I think most of the time what's happened is there's an emotional attachment to a property. If we're talking someone that's selling and needs to sell, whether it be financial or needs to sell because the spouse has passed away or whatever, there's an emotional attachment to the house. And by the time we're done with the showings and the offer process and that, they've gone through that grieving process about the property, And what I found, I had several clients tell me, initially I thought all my memories are in the house, and then they realized that no, they're taking the memories with them.
The stuff.
Yeah. The real important thing is the memories that are in their head that they're bringing with them. They're not. It's not attached to a physical location.
Right.
So that's good. Now, what about other difficult processes, like things like there's something on title or an old mortgage or something, or it's still in somebody's name that doesn't live there, or maybe doesn't live anymore, and it never got taken off title or something, that kind of stuff. You deal with that from time to time as well.
Yeah, it's less common. Most of the real estate transactions do go through, really quite efficiently. But every once in a while, yeah, you get the ones with stuff that's on title that we weren't expecting. I had one. We were doing the sale on a property up in North Bay, and the property had on it a mortgage still registered before they were called mortgages.
They were called mortgages.
Yeah. When they were registered on a title, they were actually called something else, and for the life of me, I can't even recall what it was called again. And stuff like that comes up every once in a while. And he was actually there from before our selling client owned the property, and it should have been gone when it should have been removed when they bought it, and it never was. So. There's strangeness like that comes up every once in a while, but luckily the systems that have been put in place by the province and law societies and lawyers and general practices and stuff like that tend to deal with this stuff fairly efficiently. And so as long as you have the resources and contacts to be able to deal with it, it's not a matter of if they can sell the property generally, it's a matter of when, and usually we can get that done for closing in any case.
Okay, awesome. So you like to meet your people face to face?
I do.
Tell me about your process.
So, as far as process goes, the very first thing I do with people, very first contact usually is a phone call, because somebody get referred to the office, and in that very first phone call, I want to make sure that people are set up. I think that the common experience for people calling lawyer's office is to have a really brisk phone call with somebody who gives them a general idea of costs and stuff like that. Because when they call, they talk to me personally. I don't pass them through an assistant first. I want to give them that full view of costs and process right from the start. Number one, that sets expectations, because that's super important, right? The last thing you want to do with people who are buying a house is surprise them. And second, giving them a tailored and really detailed view of their costs means that coming up, they don't end up with expenses they weren't expecting. So, I'll find out who they are, what property they're buying, how much they're buying for, why and where they're buying it, and which lender they're using, and those factors all kind of come together to help us put together a reasonable cost estimate, and that would include fees, disbursements, land transfer tax, adjustments, and then any other costs. Let's say if they were buying with less than 20% down.
So you're doing all that up front.
Yeah, and I try to. And I do it verbally with them first on the phone call.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I've found that buyers sometimes don't realize is that if they're using CMHC, then they'll put the CMHC fee into the mortgage, but there's something that they get dinged with that's why they don't really know
every single time, right? So the question after purchase price and land transfer taxes, do you have 20% down? And if the answer is no, we need to know that, because they need to know that, right? If they've got 5% down, they are going to be paying for a CMHC or Genworth mortgage insurance policy, and that gets added to the mortgage and taken off of the top.
And they're aware of that.
And they know that,
that's
right?
no problem. Yeah.
But the PST on that also gets held back, and so that can be $700 or $800 that they weren't planning on spending on closing.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so that's an extra $700 or $800, and then there's tax adjustments and things like that.
Yeah.
So you calculate all those, so there's no surprises, because there's nothing worse than having a client call me and go, I'm short $3,000. And we're supposed to close tomorrow. What can I do?
Where do I get this from?
Yeah, and, I've loaned money
worst.
before. I prefer not to, but because the worst part is once somebody's made a commitment to buy a home, they're in a legal binding contract. Once they've fulfilled all their conditions and they've firmed
financing.
it up. Now, if they have a hiccup, there's ramifications that the seller has opportunity to bring, right?
You just hope that the seller isn't buying on the same day. and doesn't mind
And
maybe
many of them
pushing
do.
it a day. Yeah, many of them do.
Yeah.
Although
many of
it's
them
for some reason it seems to be less common than perhaps it used to be.
Sorry.
I don't know, but
I think
it
people
does happen.
I think more and more of my clients, I'm suggesting, pay the little bit of admin fees and stuff to have a bridge financing,
Yeah.
and get in a week early.
Yeah.
Or 2 weeks early and do your painting,
And it gives you time
whatever,
to
get it, move
settle
in
and-
slowly and whatever, and then that way, if they do have a closing hiccup, they've already got bridge financing and they're
Yeah,
good,
and,
right?
and if they have to push that that purchase a day, which is not always reliable, you can't always get a seller to agree to that anyway. But even if you do, you've got that time exactly.
Yeah, I find most sellers, they don't want to have the closing delayed, but if you can assure
reasonable.
them that there's a reasonable reason and that it's going to be fixed the next day, they take their lumps.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
They do.
Okay. So, is there a retainer required to hire you as a real estate person, or what's the standard, the industry kind of?
Well, it's technically a risk, but it's not actually. Real estate closings almost always complete, right? And so doing a bunch of work before a closing and before I collect on fees, it seems like a bit of a risk because I could put all that work in, it could not close, and I could walk away with nothing. But
Sounds like being a real estate agent.
yeah, but because the work is so consistent and the job is so consistent, I don't take a retainer up front unless there's really exceptional circumstances, unless there's work that has to be done, even like before you firm up. If God forbid a client wants me to write an agreement of purchase and sale for them, and I try to talk them out of that, with the whole fiber of my being, because that's not my expertise, and the real estate agents, you guys are, that's your area. That's what you guys are good on negotiations. You can tell them if they're getting a good deal, and so I try my absolute hardest to get these guys to use a realtor instead of me. But it's only in cases like that I would actually, even consider taking, a bit of a retainer up front. Other than that, I get paid on closing, and it's an insurance to make sure the job's done right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, so you take all the upfront risk,
I do.
and they reimburse you when it closes.
When it closes.
Whether it's the seller or the buyer, both.
Seller or buyer, yeah.
Both are the same.
So a seller, it comes out of the sale proceeds, and a buyer, it just becomes part of their closing costs. They bring in their down payment, and then all the, their land transfer tax and all that stuff, and the fees and disbursements all lumps into one. They deliver it to the office, and we take our payment on closing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I had an interesting situation the other day. Both, because we sell a property, we actually had both sides of the transaction, which means we were serving the buyer and the seller.
Yep.
Both of them handed in who they wanted to use as a lawyer.
That was the same person.
Same lawyer.
Yeah.
And then,
Okay.
And then I go, well, you both can't use
Nah,
the
I
same
can't do
lawyer.
that.
And one of them was really not happy.
And I suppose it's always, the first person who called the office at that point.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't
We
know.
called the lawyer's
The
office.
lawyer's
you
office
mean.
first.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So
Yeah.
no longer can you work for both sides.
Really limited circumstances you can. Most of the time, no. So if you're doing a transaction between family members, it turns out you actually can do both sides no matter what, which is great. And there's a couple other stuff like that. But the definition of related parties, family members, is really tight. Like aunt to nephew is not going to do it.
It's not going to do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if you're just joining us, you're listening to the Inside Track on Real Estate, and I've got a guest here is Matt Mayo, and Matt is a real estate lawyer. And we didn't actually tell him how to reach you. Maybe we should do that, just since we're at
for sure.
halftime. We're doing a little break here.
Sounds good.
So how would they reach you?
Best way to get a hold of me really is by phone call. I like talking to people first, and then we can get connected by email. So our phone number at McLean's Lawyers is 613-695-9999. 6774, extension 201 is for me. Give us a call, and we'd be happy to have a chat with you for sure.
And your office is right down in the
Right,
Glebe, right?
Yeah, Bank and Forth in the Glebe.
Okay, so nice and easy to get to.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So give us an idea of costs, fees, disbursement, land transfer tax, maybe a typical transaction, although there's no atypical transaction.
Yeah.
And then also talk about, for first-time home buyers, there's a rebate right now, which makes it a good time for a first-time home buyer to buy.
It is. So fees, disbursements, land transfer tax adjustments change for every single property. The typical purchase is going to have the same fee, generally speaking, in our office. If you buy a condo, you end up spending a bit more on the status certificate and the review, but then you end up saving money on things like title insurance and searches, right? Those just cost less for condos. And so, generally speaking, what I end up telling people, for the most part, for fees and disbursements, is to budget for about $1,800, and it's going to come in less than that. Generally speaking, again,
is that on a lower price property?
That's the fees and disbursements.
Oh, without the land transfer.
Yeah, without land transfer.
Okay,
absolutely, without land transfer. Once you get up above 500,000. Even the disbursements start to increase because title insurance just costs more at a higher price point.
Okay, and is it cheaper to sell than it is to buy?
Yeah, absolutely. Typically? For sales are really, really stable at just around the $1,200 mark.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's fees and disbursement taxes and stuff like that.
That's discharging, not the
discharging
penalties,
a single mortgage.
But discharging a single mortgage.
Yeah,
like
and
the
so
paperwork.
the paperwork to do it, exactly.
Okay, and talk to us about land transfer tax. Fortunately, we're not like Toronto, parts of Toronto, where they put an extra excise tax on your land transfer tax.
They nearly double it. Yeah.
Yes.
They nearly
it's
double
like an
it.
extra $10,000 or something.
It goes up, with the purchase price, just like the provincial one. Yeah. So the best one that I ever, worst land transfer tax I ever saw was on a $2 million condo in Toronto, and the land transfer tax was $70,000.
Ouch.
$70,000, pretty much 35 to each. It's just a little bit different.
Okay, so now that we scared the boots off of our first-time buyer viewers, let's say a $300,000 townhouse.
Yep.
First-time buyers, what's our land transfer tax going to be like?
So at $300,000, the land transfer is slightly over 1% at that point. I believe it's about $3,250. Okay. But as a first-time home buyer, you get to chop off $2,000. Now, first-time home buyers, this is really important. First-time home buyers can't re-qualify as a first-time home buyer after a certain amount of time of not owning a house, as you can with our RSPs. If you've ever owned or if you've ever held any interest in any property anywhere in the world, you're disqualified. You just can't get the rebate.
Anywhere in the world.
Anywhere in the world. So, making sure that like you can't have held property in trust or had property held in trust for you, rather. You couldn't have been a spouse to somebody who owned property. Nothing like that. That all completely disqualifies
a spouse
you.
of somebody who owned property, even if they owned it before you married them.
If they owned it before you married them and they sold it before you married them, then you're fine.
Oh, okay.
Then you can get half of it because
if you're both buying the property.
If you're both buying the property. But if you were a spouse and your spouse owned property, you had a spousal interest in the property, which means you're disqualified now. So it's the province keeps it very tight.
And does that include commercial property or just residential?
So there's no land transfer tax rebate on commercial.
No, but let's say someone owned a piece of commercial property that was a non-resident. I'm throwing something weird at you. That's a curveball.
Yeah, that's a curveball. I'd have to do some research on that one. I haven't actually run into that one before. That's a good one.
Okay, because most time people don't buy commercial property before they buy a residential property. Yeah.
So I'd have to look into that. That's a good one. That's a good one.
Okay, so working closely with a realtor, is that beneficial for your clients? What's that look like?
So I make a real point of working closely with the realtors that end up referring to me because there's often questions that need to be answered even before the firming up process, and I like being a legal resource for them. Whether or not the client actually comes and does their transaction at our office is a separate question, but it's a way that I can provide value to the clients before they actually have a transaction put in place, and provide value to the realtors as well. I like doing research, and in fact, if I could just get paid to research and provide opinions, that's probably what I would do.
There's not much money in that, though, is there?
No.
Because everybody's got an opinion.
Yeah, exactly. So, actually being able to help out in the beginning part is really quite useful.
And I know I've called you from time to time because
yeah.
there's some things that just I go, ooh, I need a legal opinion on this because I'm not going to put my neck out until I know a little more information. So that's cool. So what do you do to stay current? I know you haven't. I mean, you're pretty. I wouldn't call you green because you've been doing this for a number of years, and yet you're not an old timer either. No. But what do you do to stay current?
And it's super important to keep doing that. The Law Society requires us to keep doing continuing legal education every year, a certain amount of credits every year on both substantive topics and professionalism stuff. So practice management and all that stuff. And so that gets done every year for sure. I'm currently a member of the County Carleton Law Association Real Estate Lawyers Committee, which is a mouthful.
That's more than a mouthful.
But it was a really happy coincidence for me that I ended up getting on board this committee. I happened to be in the right place at the right time, met the right people, and I was very fortunate to end up with access to these people that it's me and one other solicitor who's got I believe 6 or 7 years in, and everybody else is 25 and 35 years in, and so being able to use them as well as a resource, in turn, and keeping myself on top of the most current trends, because on the committee that's what we're dealing with, right? Updating the forms that go between lawyers, the vendor's closing certificate, that sort of thing, is actually something that's happening right now. But it keeps me on top of issues that are coming up, current problems with, the most current issues with mortgage frauds or things like that, and having that exposure has been priceless.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you brought up mortgage fraud. Is that something that people are subject to lately? Is it?
It's not
happening?
It's not common. It is the most common complaint received by the Law Society about lawyers. It has to do with mortgage transactions. However, it's among the general population, it's really quite rare, and you only really see problems where the most common instance is if there's a lawyer involved that's not doing things properly.
Okay.
As well.
We don't want to go down that road.
Because
So get a good lawyer.
Yes.
And interesting enough, the interesting thing with mortgage or identity theft is where I was more going. With identity theft, your title insurance covers you for that, right? So.
And actually, that's one of the protections that title insurance can give you that you can't really get anywhere else, right? You generally speaking have two options when you're buying a house and getting a mortgage. You either need to buy them title insurance because they're going to insist on it, or you need to get what's called a solicitor's opinion on title, which involves getting a current survey, and surveys cost $2,500 to $3,500, and so getting that plus the opinion is really quite expensive, but it also doesn't cover you for things like identity fraud.
So title insurance is inexpensive, worth the couple bucks. Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, Matt.
No problem.
Give them the number again if they want to reach you, and then I'm going to highlight a couple properties we have for sale.
Yeah, absolutely. So our number is 613-695-6774. My extension is 201, and you can find us online as well at mcleanslawyers.com.
Okay. Well, I've got a couple properties I'd like to highlight. One is in Barhaven. It's a townhome. It's not a townhome. It's a single home.
There you go.
$300,000. Make a great investment property. And it has an ensuite bathroom. Great starter home. Then we also have another property out in Canada. This is one of those kind of stacked houses, where you go up a flight of stairs. Beautiful vaulted ceilings, hardwood floors throughout, and they're actually hardwood floors that are, what do they call them? They're designed for people that have environmental sensitivities, so they don't off-gas. And beautiful property. That's available at $259, and right in the Canada Lakes areas. Yeah. So it is a condominium, but two great properties. And I think, this being the season for people really wanting to get out,
just the season.
We've been cocooned for quite a while with the cold and the winter and the snow and all that. And so I'm finding the phones ringing. We're getting 2-3 offers a day now at this point. So take your vitamins, Matt. We're going to be sending you some clients.
I'll see you on the other side for sure.
Yeah. So those are two great properties, and we've got quite a number of properties. We have access to actually every property in the Ottawa and surrounding area, and we can refer you to some great realtors around Ottawa. Whether you're going to Toronto, North Bay, Vancouver, doesn't matter. We can refer. And I noticed you guys can do real estate practice. Yeah. Right, do closings anywhere in Ontario, right?
Anywhere in Ontario.
Yeah, anywhere in Ontario. So no matter where you're moving to or coming from, we would love to serve you and help you, put you in touch with the right professionals that can help you. And all you got to do is give us a call. We're friendly when you call. 613-860-4663. That's 613-860-4663. And if you're a little shy and you don't want to get on the phone, you can email us at info@deckerteam. That's info@deckerteam.com. And we'd love to chat with you. We just love serving. And hopefully it becomes obvious when you see the smile on our face as we help you. All the best, and thanks for tuning in to the Inside Track on Real Estate with the Decker Team.